A lot of people say, well, doesn't Cinerama kind of compare to IMAX? This is a sketch of what an IMAX theater looks like. You know, the stadium-style seating, the giant six-story tall screen, and up here they're using a 70mm projector that has the film go through sideways through the projector to give that large, clear image. Well, basically, you're getting about the same clarity of when we played Lawrence of Arabia at this theater years ago, or when we bring in 2001, this coming Thanksgiving, we're going to be playing, I love it, a new print of 2001 and 70. You get 16 times sharper focus. Well, basically, IMAX does the same thing. You get 16 times sharper focus, but when you blow it up on the screen, this may be 4 times as large as the one we have here. There's a couple of problems you have. All that clarity kind of gets lost. What they're trying to do to give you that you are there sensation is to use a giant screen. Well, there's 2 things you can do to get the same effect. You could come and sit where these guys are in the front row, which basically is, you're just getting closer to a big image that goes beyond your range of vision, beyond your peripheral vision, but you won't get the same effect of 3D that you get when you look at a Cinerama screen, because Cinerama is in 3D by having the screen curve around you. It comes into your vision, and your brain kind of brainwashes into thinking you're actually there. It's really happening. Beyond IMAX, we have OmniMax, which is a curved dome-like screen. The projector is right in here that fills this big screen. They have speakers all over the place. The image is just gigantic. It's huge. And a lot of stuff really is amazing in this process. You get to see 30, 40-minute travelogues where they take you out in the stars between the planets. They take you into the oceans. They take you to all kinds of incredible photography. So another drawback of this system, and I hate to knock it, I'm just trying to tell you that even though it's new and it's big or it's louder, it's not necessarily better than Cinerama. When someone is sitting in the audience, let's say you're sitting in their sweet spots, you're sitting right in the center, you look out at this plane, your eye still is only going to see clearly in what's in focus in 146 degree curve, about 55 degrees high. The rest of that image is going to be lost. I had a technician here, it's like the second or third week we were playing Cinerama, and I quoted an article that I had read that said that the human eye, when they look at an OmniMax screen, can only see clearly 25%. You can only process, I mean, you have to look over here, you miss 75%. Well, he held up his hand, he corrected me. He said that wasn't true. It was 27%. This, I hope, will someday be John's home cinema. We're going to put some couches in, you know, put some projectors, some sound equipment. I thought leather lazy boys would be a nice touch. When John was experimenting at home with, he actually had the 3 35mm projectors, and they're the same projectors that are here. Abel and Charlie came from Europe. Baker, the center projector, came from Indianapolis. The sound reproducer, that giant reel-to-reel tape player that plays back the 7 channels of sound, came from St. Louis, Missouri. But not all these parts came from those cities. That's where just most of them came from. When John experimented for such a long time in his basement and started getting calls from, like, Mrs. Lowell Thomas contacted him, other people who had been connected with Cinerama, he said he's interviewed 40% of the people who worked behind the scenes on Cinerama, collecting even more films and equipment. He wanted a bigger screen. I mean, think about it. You know, the basement is nice, but I mean, it's only 7 foot tall. So this is, I gotta clarify this. John wants me to make it clear that his wife had already divorced him by this point, okay? Then he started building on the first floor. He has a single-story ranch in West Carrollton, Ohio. From the outside, it looks like a regular house. Red brick, 1-story, garage. The mailbox looks like a projector. Your average house. When you go to his house and you open up the front door, you can see that he took out 2 bedrooms, most of the living room, most of the kitchen. You guys who like to do some tinkering at home with saws and drills and stuff, he went up in the attic, moved the joist in the attic up a few feet, knocked out the ceiling, so now he's got a 10-foot tall screen that's 20 feet round, and of course he had to have electrified curtains and lights, and for some reason he's got a skylight in the roof. He likes to play around, tinker with equipment. And for the seating in his home cinema, it's 2 couches. The one in the back is about 8 inches higher, so we can call it the balcony. And he would show screenings in his home using these projectors on that screen to people who had come from around the world. If you look in our lobby during intermission, above the water fountain is a Cinerama guest book. They would have people sign up at the Daybell Cinema when it played here in Dayton. In 1987, the family who appeared in Cinerama Holiday came to visit his home and signed that same guest book. And he is allowing us to show that, to show people, you know, that it actually happened. That Mr. and Mrs. Marsh got to get together. They were divorced too. They got together with their kids to see this movie because the grandkids had never seen Grandpa on the big screen, skinny. So it was quite a fun event to bring all of them together. One of the big differences, we got to keep coming back to it, are the ribbons. Hi, Jake. The ribbons in the screen. By slicing up the image, by intentionally overlapping these ribbons, you get to see this as part of the tour for this Cinerama. These ribbons, all 980 of them, that are overlapped by 3/32 of an inch, they're run all the way up to the roof and are bolted to the floor. Slice up the image. They take the light and the picture from that projector and bend it 7 degrees, aim it to the center section. That's why we call it sweet spots. Some people fight over the center. If you sit in the center section, you're still going to get the full effect of Cinerama. People sitting on the aisles are going to get most of the effect. Unfortunately, some of the washout on the side screens, they're not going to get the full effect. But if you spend most of your time just looking at the center of the screen, your eye can still focus on this whole huge range and process all that beautiful Technicolor. And I like telling people about Technicolor. Even though the company stopped making films in 1970, the last true Technicolor film was The Godfather just recently. And I mean, as in a month ago, the company, which is now a shipping company, experimented with making Technicolor films again, and they struck 4 prints of the film Giant, starring Elizabeth Taylor, Rock Hudson, and James Dean. And it's playing right now in major markets in New York, LA, Chicago. And we hope to bring it here because it's in CinemaScope. And even though CinemaScope's not as good as Cinerama, when we put CinemaScope on a ribbon curved screen, you're going to get some of the effect that you're actually getting, some of that 3D feel. So we're hoping that Technicolor comes back full force and will restore some other films. I was talking with Robert Harrison Spring. He said they're also restoring 7 Brides for 7 Brothers, which has not existed on film except in a red format. All the other colors have faded. And we played it years ago here. John Harvey, as a technician, played it in 4-track magnetic sound just so people could see the picture, even though it was pink. But it was kind of fun. When I introduced that movie, I told people, you know that movie you watch on TV? That's 3 Brides for 3 Sisters. On the big screen, you get 7 Brides for 7 Sisters. Or for 7 Sisters, yeah, right. We're going to take a brief break, stretch our legs for about 5 minutes, then we'll get started with part 1 of How the West Was Won. Thanks for putting up with the slide projector. Every once in a while, it has a harder time waking up than I do. Thank you for being patient. Magazines. We even have an eye surgeon here who is a big Cinerama fan that came from Michigan. We've got people from all over the country here today, so it's a real privilege for you to come. When we set up the whole ticket system about opening the doors at 11:30, I thought that there'd be a dozen people, and they just walk into the lobby and we'd talk for a half hour. And then if they wanted to, some of them would come in here and we'd have a little lecture. Little did I know, the first weekend we start doing this, we had 50 people outside the door wanting to rush into the center section. Then a week later, it was like 75 people wanting to get in here. So appreciate your working with us. This is kind of an evolving science. I was learning from some of the film buffs in the lobby just after the introduction that Giant is not in CinemaScope, as I said. It's a flat movie that's wider than pre-1952 movies, but it's not CinemaScope. So, gosh, I hope we don't show it that way. Also, I want to tell you the first half of How the West Was Won is 1 hour and 15 minutes long. There'll be a half-hour intermission. It takes approximately a half hour for John Harvey. He's the film technician that owns the equipment, the prints, and runs the whole show by himself. He's the only man in the world who can do it. Originally, it took 5 guys to run it. After a while, they got it down to 4. But John has been doing this for about 10 years in his home, and he's got it down to a science because he can only trust himself. And I asked him one time, I said, how do you do it without breaking the film, without having something screw up? And he said he prays a lot as he runs between the projectors. So 1 hour and 15 minutes for the first half, 1 hour and 15 minutes for the second half, a half-hour intermission. At intermission, you have to promise me you're not going to try to talk to John Harvey. He has to remain perfectly focused. He has 8 reels of film to change. They weigh 90 pounds each. He has to be going between each piece of equipment. You can't ask him a question. You can't say thank you. Anything like that will have to wait till after the end of the second half. At the end of the second half, he'll come down here and stand and answer any questions. And we'll divide up what birthday cake is left at. We'll get started now with part one. There's, well, I think it's about 3 to 4 minutes of some incredible walk-in music. And we'll see you at intermission. I'll be available for any answers, questions, or edification. Thanks again for coming. Hope you enjoy this incredible print of How the West Was Won.